Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being with us today as we celebrate the installation of Dr. Pedro Nogueira, who has joined USC as the 11th Dean of the Rossier School of Education. I'd like to extend my personal welcome to Dean Nogueira's family, to the entire Rossier community, and to all the faculty, staff, students, alumni, and Rossier supporters who are celebrating with us today. This is a critical time in the field of education, here on campus, in our local communities, across Los Angeles, and indeed across the country and around the world. Much is being contested: principles, priorities, funding, curricula, how we teach. The future of education is wide open, and we here at USC have the power to shape it. We expect Dean Nogueira to call on his teaching and research experience, his understanding of the relationship between democracy and education, and his advocacy for underserved populations to provide bold leadership, drive education back to the forefront of our national conversation, lead the impactful changes in our schools, and train exceptional education leaders. Dean Nogueira succeeds Karen Sims Gallagher as the Emory Stoops and Joyce King Stoops Dean. And I would like to take a moment to extend my personal gratitude to Karen for her 2 decades of transformative leadership. Thanks to Dr. Gallagher's work, Rossier is recognized across the world for developing the best leaders in education. And Dean Nogueira will build on this established position to push more programs that train the educators we need to advance our society. I would also like to thank the Dean Search Committee for their work and the advisory group for their service to USC in helping to bring Pedro to us. You aimed high and acted quickly and brought us, quite simply, the best leader at this critical time for our School of Education. Pedro has been here for 3 months already, and I'm looking forward to accelerating our work together in this significant moment in our university's and our nation's history. Thank you. It is my pleasure now to introduce the President of the University of Southern California, Carol L. Folt.
Thank you. Now I'm unmuted. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you to everybody for joining us. This is an exciting day for USC Rossier, and I am delighted to be sharing in this celebration with all of you. I can feel the joy that's surrounding our newest dean. He's one of America's most influential voices in education, and he believes deeply, deeply in the powers of schools. Schools give children a chance to succeed, as he puts it, and teach them to be responsible adults. And he means every child. He sees children living in poverty, children experiencing housing instability, and children overlooked by the system. For these children, schools are their only chance. And that is so true. And today we are honoring a leader who sees with his heart what education can do. And it's truly a privilege to formally install the new dean of our Rossier School of Education, Dr. Pedro Nogueira. We're joined today by Pedro's family, his mother, Millicent Nogueira, his wife, Allison Pimentel, their daughter, Anna. Also joining us are Pedro's 4 adult children, Joaquin, Amia, Antonio, and Naima. Welcome to all of you. For more than 15 years, Pedro has had a hands-on relationship to engagement, advocacy, and equity in our schools. It's no wonder that so many educational leaders look to him for help in reimagining their schools and their classrooms. He has a powerful presence and a compassionate, thoughtful voice. Consider how he stepped up immediately during the COVID crisis. On his very first day on the job here at USC, he appeared on MSNBC to talk about how to safely reopen schools. He's also looking deeply at what the pandemic has exposed. The great inequity across our schools, he calls it. When our schools closed, children from low-income families, children whose families are homeless, and children with special needs were hit the hardest. The immediate need was for computers and for internet access. Universities like USC stepped up to help. Philanthropists like Leslie and Bill McMorrow made sure that the students in our NAI program had computers and access to Wi-Fi. Without this kind of help, Dr. Noguera says so many of these kids would fall further and further behind. Access to internet, though, isn't the only inequity issue that he sees. Even homework raises questions about equity. He says, there are students out there that have no one at home to help them with homework and may have no place to even get the homework done. The question he poses is simple. How fair is it that some students are judged by circumstances they can't control? And that's why he is always trying new collaborative approaches to learning and to create opportunities for every student. As he puts it, we cannot afford to be schools that are only good at serving kids that don't need much help. Dr. Noguera joins us at a time when USC Rossier has never been stronger, and I'd like to acknowledge the community gathered here with us today. Not only has the school been a leader in distance learning, looks a little prescient in that way, but under the leadership of Karen Sims Gallagher, we established the 5 college prep charter schools, high schools, right here in Southern California. And that, of course, includes the highly successful USC Hybrid High, where hundreds of at-risk students have found success and gone on to college. And then there are some pretty incredible numbers I'd like to share. More than 75 of our alumni are current K-12 superintendents in California. In 2009, we established the first ever Masters of Art in Teaching online degree. Nearly 80% of our Masters in Teaching graduates work in high-needs schools. In 2017, we launched a first-of-its-kind World Masters in Language Teaching dual degree programs. 10 Rossier Research Centers, including the Puglia Center for Higher Education, with its focus on improving access and outcomes for underserved students, enriches the field through crucial research. And this year, Rossier faculty had the highest allocation of research grant funding per faculty member of any private school of education. And clearly, in the background, my dog Charlie is giving an emphasis point to each of those great statistics I'm sharing with you. Karen Sims Gallagher and her leadership team deserve so much praise. And I'd like to add that 20 years ago, when Karen was first shaping a new vision for USC Rossier, she asked Pedro to be a consultant. To give you a little insight to what he is all about, here are some things to know. He comes to us from UCLA, where he was a distinguished professor of education and founded the Collaborative Center for the Transformation of Schools. He's also taught and held endowed chairs at NYU, at Harvard, at UC Berkeley, where he earned his PhD in sociology. He was elected to the Berkeley School Board, and he taught in the Oakland Public Schools. And he has won awards for research and advocacy in the fight against poverty from Stanford's Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences, and from the National Association of Secondary School Principals and the McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research at NYU. And he bravely agreed to be my first interviewee with our new We Are SC interview series. The path he has taken in life has been shaped by his immigrant parents who settled in the Brownsville section of Brooklyn. His father, he says, taught him and his 5 siblings to have a love of reading, and he showed them how a library card was the key to a free education. His father also intervened when Pedro and his brother, both very gifted students, were placed in special education in their new integrated school in suburban Long Island, merely on the basis of their surname and the assumption that they were non-English speakers. His parents didn't have high school diplomas, but they sent all 6 of their kids to top colleges: Harvard, Cornell, Brown, UC Berkeley. He remembers when he got to Brown, he felt intimidated and unprepared and surrounded by wealth. One of his classmates was JFK. But his experience in school, JFK Jr., his experience in school has given him a strong sense of identity and skills in navigating cultures and advocating for himself. By the end of his first year, he had grown in confidence and he became a double major in sociology and history. He landed his first teaching job while he was still at Brown. It was at Central High School in Providence, Rhode Island. When he was asked to teach American history, it seemed to him a good fit until his mentor teacher explained, "You start at the Revolutionary War in September and you get to the Vietnam War in June, and that is as far as you go." Pedro asked, "What about the Constitution?" And the mentor teacher said, "Don't get caught up in the Constitution. The Constitution is too complicated. You've got to be at the Civil War by Christmas." Pedro replied, "Well, the Civil War is really complicated." No, you don't get it," the mentor teacher said. "You've got to be at the Great Depression by Easter." This moment proved very illuminating for him. In his heart, he was certain about 2 things. 1, he was going to teach history in a different way. And 2, his students would love history as much as he did. Well, it didn't take very long. For a class discussion about Thomas Jefferson, Pedro asked a friend to dress up as our 3rd president and answer questions from his students. It was a Q&A that cut across centuries. He told his students, ask serious questions and don't shy away from difficult truths. "It comes, my friend," Pedro recalled, and the first question my students asked, "What about Sally Hemings?" In that moment, the young teacher had truly succeeded. His students were engaged, pursuing real truths, and most importantly, they were excited about learning. That, he says, is what education should always be about. Please welcome a man who keeps fighting to improve education, to rethink it, and to reshape it, the Emory Stoops and Joyce King Stoops Dean of the USC Rasier School of Education, Dr. Pedro Nogueira.
President Carol Folt, Provost Chip Zukowski, faculty, staff, students, and alumni of the Rasier School of Education at USC. And last but not least, my wife Allison Pimentel and the Nogueira family who have joined this gathering today. I'm deeply honored to assume the title of the Emory Stoops and Joyce King Stoops Dean of the USC Rasier School of Education. I too want to thank and recognize Karen Sims Gallagher, the Rasier Board of Counselors, and my new colleagues on the faculty and staff at USC Rasier for the strong state in which I found the school when I arrived to join you, just 3 months ago to this day. Those who know me may be surprised by my appointment as dean. They know I have been reluctant about assuming a position of administrative leadership. My hesitation was not because I don't value and appreciate the need for such leadership, particularly in a school of education. Rather, my reluctance was due to the fact that I loved being a professor. I loved doing research and writing, delivering lectures around the world, and serving on think tanks and as an advisor to school districts and universities and large organizations. Most of all, I've enjoyed teaching and advising students for the last 30 years, and I take great pride in what many of my former students have accomplished. However, I'm now fully prepared and excited about the prospect of working in support of other educators in my new role as Dean of Rasier. I'm already fully immersed in the job, and I must admit that I love it. I'm especially optimistic about our school's potential to do even more work that can transform the field of education. Although I will admit that I'm a bit tired of sitting at my desk at home doing Zoom meetings and presentations, I have begun coming into the office, and I'm truly fascinated and deeply engaged by all aspects of the work we're doing at Rasier. With some of the top researchers in the field and a team of faculty and staff who who are committed to students and to providing education professionals at all levels with the very best possible training, I've been energized by what I've seen and experienced so far. I now have a new appreciation for the role of dean. In explaining what it means to be a dean to one of my granddaughters, I told her that it was like being a coach. You don't get to play the game, but you must develop a strategy and produce results. I'm confident that we at Rossier are well positioned to produce highly significant results. When I was selected for this job by President Folt, I embraced the opportunity because I believe in the power of education. And I believe that even at this moment of conflict, tumult, and uncertainty, Rossier will have an even greater impact on our field, locally, nationally, and internationally. My belief and optimism are rooted in the research and in my personal and professional experience. From a personal standpoint, I know firsthand the transformative power of education. Growing up in one of few neighborhoods in New York that still, today, has not gentrified, education transformed my life. It opened doors for me and created possibilities that I never knew existed. President Folt spoke of my parents, immigrants from the Caribbean, and my upbringing with my 5 siblings. My father was a police officer for 22 years, until he was injured in the line of duty. He also drove a taxi while my mother managed our family. Like most immigrants, they knew how to get the job done. But they also instilled in us a strong belief in the value of education. They held us to high standards. They imparted a strong sense of discipline and responsibility in us, and they expected us to perform. But my experience is just one example of the power of education. We know from research that education can break the cycle of poverty, particularly when we focus on educating women and girls. We know that education is the most effective means for reducing recidivism among those who are incarcerated, improving health outcomes, and feeding the democratic spirit in society. Because educated people cannot be as easily manipulated by demagogues or misled by hate-filled rhetoric and fake news. The research shows us that education is our best resource for countering ignorance, hatred, and bigotry. I believe Rossier is more than ready to lead on many of these issues. We have a proud legacy of training educational leaders throughout California and the nation, and our faculty have received numerous awards and honors for their cutting-edge research and scholarship. Together, we can and will do even more. I've already begun working with faculty and staff on 3 initiatives that are critical to our field, and I'd like to argue to the future of our country. These are, first, reimagining education after the pandemic. We will launch a series of conversations with thought leaders in technology, media, science, education, and policy to explore how we can bring innovative ideas into schools to make them more responsive to the social and emotional needs of children, to make learning more stimulating and engaging, and to make schools more equitable too. Second, creating the next generation of teachers for Los Angeles. Building on our past work with LA Unified School District, our next collaboration will be designed to build a residency teacher education program that will increase the supply of diverse, committed, and talented teachers in LA. And third, education for democracy. We will work with historians, seasoned practitioners, and several online platforms to design curricula that can be used by teachers to prepare students to think critically, to understand our history and the Constitution, to engage in civil debate, and to be prepared to defend and participate in democracy. You will learn more about these initiatives in the coming weeks. Through our actions, you will see that our mission at Rossier is well aligned with the mission of USC, as described by President Folt, a private university with a public purpose. Our goal is to ensure that Rossier will be a leader in devising solutions to some of the complex challenges that face education and society today. We already lead in so many ways. President Folt mentioned that more than 75 of Rossier's alumni currently serve as K-12 superintendents in California. Additionally, we have partnerships with dozens of educational organizations and nonprofits, and we work closely with over 150 K-12 schools in the Los Angeles area alone. We work with school districts across California as well, but increasingly our reach extends across the country and throughout the world. All of these activities serve as evidence that USC Rossier has the capacity and vision to lead on many different fronts. Most importantly, we have the commitment of our dedicated faculty, students, and staff to play a leadership role in the work that lies ahead. I'm sure we all agree that these are challenging and stressful times. We live with extraordinary uncertainty that is taking a toll on our nerves and our well-being. We cannot predict what will happen in the coming election, when this pandemic will subside, and when we will be allowed to return to campus, or when we will be hit by yet another natural disaster, natural or human-made. However, we do know that education continues to be our best resource, and perhaps our most reliable means to prepare for the future. It is often said that children are the future. If that statement is more than merely a cliche, we must do everything possible to ensure that all children receive an education that will prepare them for the uncertainty and the challenges they will inherit. Education is, in fact, our most effective tool for creating a more just, equitable, and sustainable world. It is our means for ensuring that our children and future generations will have the resourcefulness, character, mindset, and wherewithal to confront the challenges they will face with courage, intelligence, rather than fear and ignorance. In order for education to rise to the challenge of the moment, we must address the system's flaws and recognize that if we are to use education as a means to prepare for the future, we cannot afford to simply tinker around the edges of the system as we know it. Too often, the system of education in this country reproduces inequality, reinforces bias, leaves our children alienated and disengaged, and fails to provide the knowledge and skills needed to strengthen our democracy. We can and must do better. We must design a system that encourages all children to think critically, that cultivates their talents as problem solvers, and that grounds them in ethics and values so they resist the urge to place self-interest before collective interest, and individual rights and privileges ahead of human rights and social responsibility. History tells us that the stakes are high if we don't do this. To help me explain why I believe it is education that must lead in this way, I'd like to share the words of the late school teacher and child psychologist Chaim Ginon. He quotes from a letter that he and fellow Israeli teachers receive from their principal every year. It reads, "I am a survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no person should witness. Gas chambers built by learned engineers, children poisoned by educated physicians, infants killed by trained nurses, women and babies shot by high school and college graduates. So I am suspicious of education. My request is this: help your children become more human. Your efforts must never produce learned masters, skilled psychopaths, or educated Eichmanns. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children more human. We at Rossier must commit ourselves to working to create an educational system that teaches and reminds children of what it truly means to be human and humane. We must not allow the dismal realities of the present or the threats of the future to overwhelm us or to drive us toward rugged individualism or to diminish our optimism about creating a better future. And lastly, as we contemplate the challenges that lie ahead, we must keep in mind that there are always two purposes to education. First, to impart the skills and knowledge needed to function in society as it is, and second, to cultivate the creativity, critical thinking, and curiosity that future generations will need so that they will have the ability to solve the many problems they will inherit from this generation. Every educator must realize that despite the constraints they may work under, they have the power and responsibility to do both. Here is another quote from Ginon, from his book, Teacher and Child. "I have come to a frightening conclusion. I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration." As that brand new teacher in Providence who President Folt referred to, at the school that was once regarded as the worst in the city, I quickly saw the power I had once the classroom door closed. With your support, I am confident that USC Rossier can lead our field in unleashing the power of education for every student without exception. I believe education can be both the instrument of inspiration that Jeannot spoke of and the tool we so badly need right now for social transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Your words were inspiring. I'm excited you're with us and excited to see where your leadership will take our school. Now, since we can't be in person today, we'd like to hear from members of the USC Rossier community who want to celebrate you joining us. I hope you enjoy it.
Congratulations, Pedro Noguera, on this, the day of your installation as the Dean of the Rossier Graduate School of Education here at the University of Southern California. As a member of your Board of Counselors, we feel so fortunate to have someone of your experience, knowledge, and unique skill set to support in this leadership position. Students of all ages in schools and universities all over the country and all over the world are being challenged in ways they and we as their educators and administrators have never experienced. Your voice and guidance is essential in this moment, as all kinds of educators and institutions seek to provide what our students so desperately need. On behalf of the Board of Counselors, we welcome this opportunity to do what we can in furtherance of the mission of Rossier to bring enlightened, research-driven, exemplary education to the schools, teachers, and administrators whose work has never been more important. Again, my congratulations.
I would like to welcome Dr. Pedro Noguera as the new Dean of the Rossier School of Education. An outstanding researcher and educator, I'm excited about the future of the school. He is an excellent leader, and his leadership should provide Rossier with the emphasis to maintain a high ranking among schools of education in American universities. Welcome to the Trojan family, Dr. Noguera.
Hello, I'm Jim Berchtold, and I married into the Trojan family when Amy King Dundon and I met after losing our first spouses. I had the pleasure of meeting and playfully interacting with Amy's mom, Joyce King Stoops, before her passing in 2010. I know that Amy and her mother both treasured their interactions with Dean Karen Sims Gallagher and their rich family history with the Rossier School of Education. I'm delighted to welcome Dean Noguera to the Emory Stoops and Joyce King Stoops Dean's Chair and look forward to his inspiring work and accomplishments in that role. Welcome, Pedro, and fight on.
On behalf of the Staff Advancement Committee, I'd like to welcome Dean Noguera into our Rossier community. The Staff Advancement Committee provides programming that supports Rossier staff members in their professional roles, encourages their personal and professional growth, builds community within the Rossier School of Education, and enhances our ability to actively participate in advancing Rossier's strategic goals. We are thrilled to welcome an astonishing leader who supports our mission and the impact he will make. We look forward to continue our work with Dr. Pedro Noguera as our new Dean. Congratulations, Dean Noguera, and welcome to the USC Rossier School of Education.
Hello everyone, and special greetings to Dean Noguera. On behalf of the Rossier faculty, I'm pleased to extend my most heartfelt congratulations on your appointment as our new Dean. I'm confident that you are the right person for us at this time. I've appreciated the critical and forward-thinking leadership that you've already been providing to us. So we're excited to welcome you into our community, and we look forward to working together alongside you to advance the Rossier mission. So once again, congratulations to you. Welcome, and fight on.
Welcome to USC, Dean Noguera. I'm Charlene Shimada. I'm part of the Board of Counselors, and I have the honor and privilege to represent Rossier on the Alumni Association Board of Governors. So on behalf of 435,000 alumni, we welcome you to USC. Fight on.
As difficult as these COVID-19 and equity challenged times are, what an extraordinary opportunity it is to have someone leading us whose scholarly and life's work has largely focused on addressing the alienation and lack of engagement by students, which has now been exacerbated by the isolation and disconnection brought by this pandemic. We're so excited to have you driving education and civic solutions for those most in need, utilizing the exceptional talents and resources of Rossier and those from inside and outside of the university who share your passions and your commitment. Congratulations, Dean Noguera.
As you can see, our community is eager to work with Pedro, and so am I. We appreciate Pedro joining us because his values align with those of President Folt, myself, and our university community. We believe that now is the time for positive disruptions that build equity into our education system. We believe in the need to recalibrate our societal values to advance us and provide better lives for all. And we know that to do this, we must be ambitious and empathetic, call on experience and scholarship, and to be unafraid to act boldly. Pedro Noguera is Dean of the USC Rossier School of Education because he embodies these principles in his leadership, and he will aggressively pursue the school's mission of preparing leaders to achieve educational equity through practice, research, and policy. We are excited about the future. Pedro, welcome and congratulations. Thank you all for being with us today.